dear students, today we are uh, going to discuss the remaining portion of gymnosperms. In the previous part, we discussed the development of male and female gametophytes, and in that part, we discussed that the gymnosperms they do vary in terms of the stage at which pollination takes place. Say, for example, in Cycas, it takes place at 3-cell stage, in Pinus at 4-cell stage, and in Ephedra, it takes place at 5-cell stage. And let's move on with the pollination. In gymnosperms, the pollination takes place exclusively with the help of wind, and we can say that they are anemophilous. Anemophilous means wind pollinated, and the pollination is direct. That means the pollen they come in direct contact with the ovule, unlike in angiosperms, where the pollen first lands on the surface of stigma. Okay, here you do not have stigma; you have simply an ovule. The pollen they come in direct contact with the ovule. And one important feature that you will remember about gymnosperms is there is a prolonged free nuclear phase in the development of female gametophyte and a long interval between pollination and fertilization. Say this is an ovule of gymnosperms, and inside this ovule you are having a female gametophyte, and outside this ovule, outside the outer layering is the nucleus, which is the diploid tissue, and the inner layer is the haploid tissue. Okay, because this has arisen, this has formed from the megaspore, which is haploid. Okay, and at the top near the micropyle you are having a depression like structure which is known as pollen chamber. The pollens they get deposited in this pollen chamber, and the rest development, the remaining development, that means the germination of pollen grains, it takes place inside this pollen chamber. And you have a prolonged free nuclear phase. It means in the development of female gametophyte, the nuclei at first they are not separated from each other with the help of walls. However, in the due course of time, these nuclei they get separated from each other with the help of walls, and you get a cellular female gametophyte. And there is a long interval between pollination and fertilization in gymnosperms. That means the pollination and fertilization, it is not simultaneous. Once the pollination has taken place, it takes a long time for the male gametophytes to cause fertilization of the eggs in the archegonium. Now, fertilization. In gymnosperms, the fertilization is siphonogamic. That means the pollen grain, it forms a tube-like structure which is known as pollen tube, and the pollen tube may be haustorial. It is haustorial. Haustorial means it absorbs the nutrition from the female gametophyte. Okay, and or it may be a sperm carrier. Okay, example is Pinus. In Cycas, it is simply haustorial in nature, and in Pinus, it is acting as the sperm carrier, because in Cycas you have motile gametes, you have motile male gametes. They do not need any tube-like structure. So we assume that the function of pollen tube in Cycas is it acts as a haustorium. It helps us in the absorption of nutrients. Okay, while as in rest of the gymnosperms, the only function of the pollen tube is they act as the sperm carriers because their sperms are non-motile. Now fertilization has taken place, and you have got a zygote. Okay, and this zygote represents the first cell of sporophytic generation. You have a zygote, and this represents the first cell of the sporophytic generation. And then you have the endosperm, and this endosperm it develops before fertilization in gymnosperms. Endosperm means food. Here you have an ovule, and this is the female gametophyte, and this female gametophyte is also known as endosperm. Okay, endosperm is haploid, and this develops before fertilization. It develops before fertilization. However, in case of angiosperms, endosperm formation takes place after fertilization. याद रखना बेटा, जो एंडोस्पर्म होता है जिम्नोस्पर्म्स का, जो फूड होता है एम्ब्रियो के लिए, वो हैप्लॉइड होता है, and that endosperm is formed before fertilization. However, in case of angiosperms. However, in case of angiosperms, the endosperm is usually triploid, and that endosperm formation takes place after fertilization. Okay. Now the development of the embryo in gymnosperms. The embryo development in gymnosperms is endoscopic. It is endoscopic. Endoscopic means it takes place inside this ovule towards the lower end. Okay, that means the shoot apex, it appears towards the lower end. Endos means inside. Okay, it does not occur at this end, it takes place inside the ovule opposite to the micropylar end. And an important feature of gymnosperms is polyembryony. In a number of gymnosperm species, more than one embryos have been reported within the same ovule, and this phenomenon of this process of formation of more than one embryos is known as polyembryony. Polyembryony may arise either due to fertilization of more than one eggs within the same ovule, or it can occur as a result of cleavage of the embryo. ठीक है, दो तरह से polyembryony हो सकती है. One is because of fertilization of more than one eggs by the sperms. Okay, you have a number of eggs in the same ovule, and if all these eggs are fertilized, they will give rise to a large number of zygotes, and these zygotes will give rise to a large number of embryos. And one another way of polyembryony is you are having a single zygote, and that zygote, it undergoes cleavage, and each fragment gives rise to a embryo. Now the seeds in gymnosperms, the seeds are naked, and they arise from naked ovules, and the ovular integuments, they form the seed coat. Okay, you have an ovule or megasporangium. That ovule or megasporangium, that is naked, and this naked ovule, it forms the seed. And in gymnosperms, the embryo which is lodged inside the ovule, it contains only a single cotyledon. In majority of cases, it contains only a single cotyledon. However, in cycas, there are two cotyledons, and in pinus, there are many cotyledons. याद रखना बेटा. In majority of the cases, in majority of the gymnosperms, the embryo that is present inside the ovule, it contains only a single cotyledon. Cotyledon means integumentary leaf, okay, or you can say the primary leaf. In cycas, however, you have two cotyledons, and in pinus you have many cotyledons. And this seed, it represents three phases in the life cycle of gymnosperms. The integument, here you can see this is the seed, okay, and these are the integuments. This outer covering is the nucellus, okay. This is the integument, this is the nucellus, and this is the embryo which is inside this endosperm, okay. And this seed, it represents the three phases in the life cycle of gymnosperms. The outer integument and the nucellus, they represent the parent sporophytic generation, okay, because these cells are diploid, okay, and they represent the parent or the first sporophytic generation. The endosperm or the female gametophyte, it represents the gametophytic phase, and the embryo which is present inside this endosperm, it represents the next sporophytic phase. So you can say that the seeds in gymnosperms, they contain three different phases. They represent three different phases in the life cycle of gymnosperms. The integument and the nucellus, which are diploid, they represent the parent sporophytic phase. The endosperm or the female gametophyte represents the gametophytic phase, haploid phase, and the embryo which is present inside this female gametophyte, it represents the next sporophytic phase. And this is all about the gymnosperms, and with this we have concluded the division gymnosperms. Okay.